This is the sign to memorialize Farmer Burns. We're going to unveil it. He was born in 1861, 4 miles west of here, in an area called Limerick. Limerick was where the Irish settled, and they farmed mostly in those days, 40, 80 acres of farmland. So Martin Burns' father died when he was 12, and they moved from the farm to Big Rock. So after the accident where his dad, a farm accident where his dad died, Farmer Burns had, it was Martin, I haven't changed his name, but Martin Burns had to grow up fast, help his family survive. He became a hired hand for local farmers. Later, he traveled around Iowa working on grading crews, building new road beds. He was a laborer, but he had become a very good wrestler. He came from a family of wrestlers, and his forefathers from Ireland were well known for their wrestling ability. Turning point in Martin Burns' life, he accompanied a load of hogs to Chicago. Remember the stories? People took livestock to Chicago. You could send somebody and they would make sure everything got taken care of properly. While in Chicago, he was able to get an opportunity to win $25 if he could stand in the ring with a professional wrestler for 15 minutes. He actually succeeded with 2 separate wrestlers and won $50. I suppose that'd be like $1,000 today. I don't know. It was a big deal. I imagine that was about 1890. That was the day he became known as Farmer Burns. He was written up in the Chicago sports page the next day, and his wrestling career had officially been launched. He went from small-town Iowa wrestler to being a recognized wrestler who could compete with the nationally known professional wrestlers. Farmer Burns was world champion wrestler for 3 years, 1895 to 1898. See this gravel road right here? It just lived 1,000 feet down that road on the right-hand side. If you happen to go that way, you'll see a sign. It says, Farmer Burns' homestead. This sign will be unveiled when we're done here, and you can take a look. Farmer Burns is not a big guy, 170 pounds, but he had a 20-inch neck. Right here, this guy's name's Curran. Him and I measured our necks yesterday. I have an 18-inch neck, he has a 19-inch neck, and Farmer Burns had a 20-inch neck, and he was smaller than we are. So he had lost a match once, and he never wanted that problem again. It was all because of neck injury. And later years, he would hang, from a noose and whistle Yankee Doodle Dandy because his neck was so powerful. Okay, so he'd tell these young guys, here's how you build your neck up. You get a leather strap, it'll fit around your neck, and you put weights on both sides. Start out with 1 pound, and you sleep with that. And as your neck muscles get stronger, you just increase the weight on the leather strap. I thought about it, and it's like you wouldn't get any sleep. I think, but these guys did it. He did. He was powerful with his neck muscle. He started by working with and training local men and boys. He would instruct them on building up their bodies to be competitors. These students admired Farmer and became their lifelong friends. One of these students was my great-great-uncle, Louis Homertout. He trained under Farmer Burns. One day, at Farmer Burns' grave, my uncle said, this is very important, the whole crux of my speech, I would remove all the dirt from his grave with a teaspoon if he would be alive when I got the job done. That profound statement has continued to inspire me to be a Farmer Burns fan. Farmer was not just a wrestling champion and a trainer, he was a man of integrity.
Yeah, I originally planned a speech that would take an hour and a half, but when I saw how warm it was today, I cut it down to 2 minutes. So I'm going to condense it a lot. If you see me staggering, it's not because I've been drinking like Farmer Burns warned us against. It's because I've got neuropathy in both feet. I was born in Waterloo, Iowa, and that's a pretty good wrestling community. And I became sports editor of the Cedar Rapids Gazette, and I once wrote a series called From Gotch to Gable. the history of Iowa wrestling, and I did a lot of research on Big Rock and Farmer Burns. And I found out that Frank Gotch owes a huge part of his career to Farmer Burns. And he's a legendary character in the sport of wrestling. He's a legendary character all over America. And believe it or not, he's a big legend in England, where they really study catch-as-can wrestling. When Wes called me up and talked to me about this project, I said, Wes, I've done so many projects, I don't know if I have much energy left. He says, you got to do this one for the farmer. So here I am. Wes Fox was a man who determined to make Farmer Burns' legacy live on. Wes, thank you. You're the reason we're all here. Real briefly, I'm going to explain to you who this guy is that's walking around with a camera. His name's Curran Jacobs. He was captain of the Michigan State wrestling team in 2012. He's a movie actor. He's been out in Hollywood with Randy Couture. He was in the TV series Modern Family. And I met with him and Randy out there for a project I was working on. And I told him about Farmer Burns and catch wrestling. And he said, what's catch wrestling? I said, you can use like submissions and chokes. He said, I'm in. How do I get in? So I told him where to go train. 4 months later, he wins the Los Angeles Catch Wrestling Championships. Then he goes to Humboldt, where I organized the Frank Gotch Championships. He wins that. And then he goes to New Jersey, and they have the United World Catch Championships. And he wins that. He's a 3-time world champion in catch wrestling. He's a movie actor. He made the documentary called For the Love of Catch. And I wrote the original script, and Curran came to my house, and we worked on it for a couple of weeks. We went up to Frank Gotch's territory, got a lot of footage up there. We went to Dan and Kathy Gable's home, got a lot of great footage there. We talked to Tom and Terry Brands in front of the Gable statue in front of Carver Hawkeye Arena. Then we went to New Salem, Illinois, with Mark Johnson, and stood on the very spot where Abraham Lincoln wrestled Jack Armstrong in 1831. Lincoln, when he was president of the United States, and they were writing his biography, he called the biographer in and he said, you've done a good job, but could you put a little bit more in there about my wrestling match with Jack Armstrong? That changed my life when I found out I could challenge myself and be a winner. So I tell people the man that saved the Union was a wrestler. Events have to go to with Dan Gable, because everybody wants Dan Gable. And let me tell you this, I've been to 48 NCAA tournaments. I've followed the sport. I know all the great, I've met every Olympic champion since 1948. Dan Gable is the greatest wrestler I ever saw. You can talk about Cal Sanderson and he's great, and the Bannocks and John Smith. But his junior year in college, he's 31-0 with 29 pins. During his career, he wrestled 5 NCAA champions, 3 two-timers, and he beat them all. What I'm going to tell you next is going to blow you away. In the 72 Olympic trials in Iowa City, the regional trials, he wrestled 6 times. He outscores them 121-0 before he pinned all 6 of them. Then he goes to the Olympic trials in Anoka, Minnesota. He wrestled 6 more times and he outscores them 78-1. And he still claims that guy didn't score that point legitimately. Then he has to wrestle off against the number 2 guy if they didn't meet in the bracket. The number 2 guy's Lloyd Keiser, and he wins the world next year. Dan beats him 20-0 and 11-0. Then with a badly damaged left knee, he enters the Olympics. The Soviets said our number 1 goal is to find a wrestler who can beat Dan Gable. In the first round, the Polak headbutts him and splits his eye open. He doesn't complain. He pins him, then go get 7 stitches. But I think he was a little bit angry because in the next match, he had the West German who had been the silver medalist before, and he beat him 20-0. And Frank Gifford, the commentator, said, that guy from West Germany is not trying to score points. He's trying to survive. Nobody scored a point on him in 6 matches. So listen to this. And I was telling this to David Taylor, who's a great wrestler at Penn State several years ago. In the last 19 matches against the greatest wrestlers in America and the world, he gave up 1 point. And then he becomes a coach. And he spends his life doing the same thing Farmer Burns spent his life, teaching people not only how to wrestle, but the values that wrestling can bring to you. Hard work, discipline, dedication, sacrifice. In 21 seasons at Iowa, he wins 15 NCAA team titles. Get a load of this. The Hawkeyes win 21 straight Big Ten titles. Before Dan, the record was Michigan State with 5. I submit to you, Farmer Burns is the most important figure of the first 50 years of wrestling when it comes to teaching and coaching, and Dan Gable is the most important figure in the last 50 years. He has thousands of speaking opportunities. Kathy and him were just watching their grandson play baseball. When I first asked him to come, he said, "I'd love to come, but I'm just being pulled in so many directions." And I said, "I understand." And then he called me up about a week later and said, "I'm coming. Farmer Burns deserves it."
Pretty cool listening to that, because I didn't know I did all that. Like excited. Now I can think a little higher myself. But anyway, we won't spend a lot of time just because we want to do what's of value. And when I say of value, and I want to make sure everybody hears me, because I used to be in a wrestling room, a lot for many years. And this is my wrestling team. Let me look it over and see how good you look. Looks pretty good. But anyway, I want to make sure that guy way back to the corner by the outhouse, or if there's somebody in that outhouse right now, I want him to hear me. I want him to hear me. There's no rules, because if they say, "Oh, you didn't tell me that." Well, I told you that 100 times, but you just didn't hear me. That never happened. I made sure everybody in my wrestling room heard me to the point where they could repeat what I said, even though they were out there wrestling and doing a lot of good stuff. So anyway, when I heard him introduce me, I'm thinking, we got excellence here. We got excellence. And I'm a little concerned that we might not be preaching that enough across the world, excellence. Even though we're unveiling something like this, it's perfect. Why? Because that's motivation, that's inspiration, that's for the little kids, that's for even the older kids, to see that there's been excellence around. And excellence is of value in America and across the world. And sometimes they try to dumb me down. They can't dumb me down. But you should never get dumbed down. Because, I like the A pluses if they give A pluses. I don't even know if they give grades anymore. But when I went to school, they gave A, B, C, B, F. They didn't give A pluses. Well, I'd love to go back to school, because I'd be getting those A pluses, or I'd be working for them. Not necessarily getting them, but working for them. Something that's high, something that people can look up to, something that people can see when they're coming in and out of this town. It's like, we don't need things that don't give figure kids inspiration to live a good life every day. And this is just another thing. And it's not just it's tough in towns to do this. You know that? There's some really good towns in Iowa that, I pull in and I see signs, and then I pull in maybe next year and they're gone. And then I actually complain a few times, and then sometimes they get back up, sometimes they don't. But if we ever want to beat something really valuable, if you really want to be able to live longer and have the opportunity, then we got to start having people that are really like Farmer Burns, that wants to be at the top. I really think that good people will make sure that they bring about good people. And that's so valuable. That's so valuable in life. We have to honor what we've done well. And we got to continue to do that.